All right, example 3 here. It says find the domain and range of each relation. Use the vertical line test to determine whether each graph is the graph of a function. So let's take a look at our graph here that is shown for example A. And we want to find the domain of this graph. And remember, the domain is all of the first coordinates, okay, of a relation. And meaning we're looking at all of the x coordinates. So what this is saying here is that we're going to look along the x-axis. Look along the x-axis. That's going to be our only focus. And we want to, since it's asking us to find the domain and range, we're going to write our answer in interval notation, as an interval notation. So as we look at this graph from left to right, because remember the interval notation, um, the smaller number is to the left, followed by a comma, followed by the larger number. So where do you see activity happening? So we're going to go from left to right, just along the x-axis. You notice here at -4 along the x-axis, this is where our graph starts. So our domain is from -4, starts at -4, and then where does it end? Right here at +4. And we're using a closed bracket because it means that the -4 and +4 is included. Now, let's look at the range. That's the next question, or next part of this question. What is the range? So when we're talking about range, we're talking about the y-axis, the second coordinate, the y coordinate. Okay. And we're going to write it as an interval notation. And so since we're writing it as an interval notation, look at the graph here. We're going to start from the bottom because remember below 0 on the y-axis you have all negative numbers. So we're going to start from the bottom, work our way up to the top. Where does this graph start? At -2. And then keep going. Where does it end? At +2. And we close it. So that is our domain and range of this graph. And then the question is asking us, is this graph a function or not? By the vertical line test. So if we draw a vertical line anywhere, notice where the graph touches on the vertical line. It touches twice. So we would say that this graph is not a function. Next example, B. We have a parabola here, and we want to find the domain and range. Domain, but before we talk about domain, even though we don't see it, but there are arrows at the end of this parabola on the left side and the right side. So it means that this parabola is continuous. It keeps going. So as we look at our domain for this graph here, okay, I want you to notice to the left of 0 on the x-axis, the graph keeps going up, and as well as the right side on the right side of the x-axis. So our domain would be from -infinity to +infinity. And then our range, we're going to look along the y-axis. Okay, so as we start from the bottom, working our way, we notice that this parabola starts at -4, and as we keep going upward, 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 it goes to positive infinity with the closed parenthesis. And then to answer the last question, draw a vertical line. This parabola touches once on the vertical line. Therefore, this equation, or excuse me, this graph is a function. Next example. Okay, as I adjust this, what we have here, we have an absolute value equation. So our absolute value equation, take a look at that. We'll zoom in some. Just like the parabola, the end of the absolute value equation is continuous. So what do you think the domain would be for this graph? It will be from negative infinity to positive infinity. Okay, and that is my sideways 8. And then the range is going to be from -2 to positive infinity as we look along the y-axis. And then lastly, the last example here, letter D. Let's look at that one. We have a line segment because we have a start point, we have an ending point. Now, as we read the graph from left to right, to find the domain, our domain, where does this point start? On the x-axis, it starts at -1. And then where does it end? It ends at +2. So that is our domain. Open bracket, -1, comma, +2, close bracket. Now our range, we start from the y-axis, the negative y-axis, and work our way up. So this line segment starts at, I'm stopping at -2, and then it's ending at, that will be +9. So this is our domain and range. Now for both of these graphs, which I didn't answer the last part for C and D, both graphs are functions. Because when you draw the vertical line, the graph touches on the vertical line once.